Hi everyone, back again with another episode of the Fintech Diaries. If this is your first time tuning in, a warm welcome from me. My name is Jack Terrell and I specialise in financial technology recruitment in the UK. For the last number of months, I've had the privilege of sitting down with some of the brightest minds that are shaping the fintech landscape. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Patricia Haynes. She is the Senior Vice President of Engineering at Thredd. In this episode, Patricia takes us through her inspiring journey into technology and shares, I suppose, how she found her passion in fintech. We also discussed her strategies for scaling fintech operations seamlessly in such a fast-paced and demanding sector, as well as actually her approach to diversifying tech talent and the measurable impact this has had throughout her career. And finally, look, we also opened up about her experiences as a woman in a senior tech role, shedding light on the challenges she's faced and actually how the industry is evolving to support greater inclusivity. This is an episode packed with insights, inspiration, and practical advice. So please listen up. Good afternoon, Patricia. How are you? Thanks very much for joining me today.
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
All good, all good. So look, I suppose let's get stuck into it. And before I start asking you any questions, I would like to just begin with, could you share a bit about your sort of path into technology and maybe perhaps what actually drew you to fintech specifically?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in technology for a very long time now. I started off back in sort of late 90s as a project manager. I was terrible at being a project manager in that I was not very good at being told, oh, that was broken and we fixed it. I wanted to know what was broken, what broke it, what was the fix, how would we fix it in the future, all of that stuff. I was really very curious about the actual technology itself. So from there, we decided to utilize that as a skill. I moved into more sort of the quality assurance side of things rather than just the project management. And from there, I actually moved into QA automation and then further on into software engineering. And that was actually my first sort of foray into technology on the more hands-on side, I guess.
Okay.
Fintech itself is interesting. I arrived at fintech mainly via this sort of the anti-money laundering financial crime space, which was where I spent a large part of my career. I worked for companies that created anti-money laundering and sort of payment screening systems for large financial institutions. And from that point, I moved across into B2C. When I went into Octopus Investments and then into banking. So again, direct B2C from there. I think I find fintech particularly interesting because whether people know it or not, the security measures we take, the banking functionality, the way we create the payments processing with what I'm doing now, we take all that for granted, but it actually affects everybody's day-to-day lives. So, having a conversation with one of my parents around why you have this secondary factor for security when you're trying to make a payment or whether you're setting up a bank account. I say, well, yes, that's actually what I do. That's what I create. It's so that we keep you safer. It's so that we make your banking more efficient. And I like sort of the tangible impact I can see on the day-to-day improvement to the way we all live our lives. And I like the fact that I have a part in making it seamless, making it secure. So I guess keeping financial systems protected when people don't even know that we're protecting them, I find really rewarding.
Fantastic. When it comes to, like, obviously we're talking about fintech there, obviously like fintechs have to scale rapidly to meet sort of evolving demands and things like that. So what sort of strategies have you had to implement to ensure, I suppose, smooth scaling when it comes to operations and delivery as such?
I think the biggest lesson I've learned is scale everything. So scale the whole business. Don't just scale the engineering team. I think there's a fallacy that stuffing more engineers in will make you go faster. That only works for a while. Firstly, you need to be able to feed that team. So, you need the product expertise, the product requirements in order to go into that team and work with them and understand what they're going to create. I think also setting the strategy is really important, even for a small fintech, because if you share the big picture of what it is you're trying to build and how you're trying to build it, what the customer need is, whether that's a business or an individual, I think it helps that team of engineers to build a much more scalable quality solution. So they really need a clear view of where you're going and what that end game needs to look like in order to be able to scale the team, scale the product. Yeah. I think At the same time, it's important to build the really strong relationship with your product and your business operations teams. Your business operations teams are really at the forefront. They're going to take the call from the customer, whether that's another business or whether that's an individual. They're going to really understand what the customer pain points are and where you can make improvements. So I think operating that loop as one team, keeping the feedback loop really tight between technology, between product, between business operations is actually really important, and you are actually equally reliant on each other to make that successful. I think the other piece that you really need to work on is scaling your tech. Again, there's no point in making your product highly transactional, making it really responsive to the customer if your tech doesn't scale along with you. So whether that's network capabilities or release pipelines, you need to be able to get that solution through the process to the customer is the first piece. And then you need to monitor it. You need to be able to observe it and continuously improve so that you can, keep on top of the scalability for the customer. I think, understanding that it's a business as a whole that serves the customer, therefore it's the whole business that needs to scale together, and getting a view of that, understanding what scaling looks like. What are your expectations? What are your boundaries? How many customers are you expecting? What kind of scalability do you need for your technology? It's really important to keep ahead of that.
100%. I know we had a pretty in-depth conversation about like diversifying hiring. Could you answer how have you approached diversifying sort of tech talent when it comes to hiring? And I suppose what sort of impact have you seen from these efforts?
It does take effort. You've hit the nail on the head there. You can't just assume that it's going to happen naturally. I think it's what you need to understand is the reward of opening up to a much wider tech talent pool is a very competitive market, even though, the market has slowed down in the last year or two, but it's still competitive. You want to be hiring top talent, and you want to make sure that you're not accidentally filtering out at the wrong stage or creating your job specs in a way that people naturally filter themselves out because they don't think they can meet 100%. So I think the first piece is to have flexibility in your expectations, whether that's qualifications or the experience of the candidates you're hiring, or even role expectations. I think the thing that I love most about technology now is there are completely new pipelines of opportunity to get into tech for anybody who may not have previously had that opportunity or actually thought that technology was the right role for them. So anybody who didn't have the opportunity to go to university, anybody who didn't have the opportunity to study tech, they went down a different path and they now want to change tack and go into a technology role. Some people go into a role and they naturally migrate towards tech and they want to take that further, and it's those kind of people that you want to harness. So making sure that you're taking advantage of those new pipelines, maybe sort of entry-level training, and being prepared to do a little bit of a build on that, or on-the-job learning that you can help them to build on. You've got to be very careful about that, filtering out at the do you have a tech degree tick box approach. Actually, at a previous company, we partnered with a company called Code First Girls. We sponsored nano degrees. And then we hired the people that we sponsored into junior engineering roles, and they had either moved from graduate level, they graduated university and we're building on top of that, or my particular passion is actually career switchers. So I'm a really big fan of career switchers because they bring transferable skills. Whether they know it or not, they're bringing transferable skills with them. I remember having a conversation with someone during an interview process, and I said, how do you talk to a group of people and bring them around to your way of thinking? How do you bring them around to your ideas? And she said, I don't think I've ever done that. But she had actually taught A-level maths. Now, anybody who can teach a room full of teenagers advanced maths, that gets my vote. You can teach anything. Yeah. You can discuss anything. So that skill that she brought with her was really, really valuable to us. But again, bringing people in who have had a previous career and maybe have slightly different responsibilities, you have to be really flexible around that. So For example, if you have a candidate that can't cover, if there's an on-call requirement, if they have a disability, personal circumstances prevent them from doing that, you need to have that flexibility and say, okay, well, they can do 90% of that role.
Yeah.
We can work around that, or we can make changes to the role to facilitate that, or small physical or environmental changes if someone has a physical disability, or if they're neurodiverse and they just need the right support measures in place for them to thrive. And also very important to discuss with your hiring managers and the people who are involved in that process, so that they can keep an eye out for anybody who maybe needs a little bit of extra support through the interview process as well. I think the training of the line managers and the people in the interview process is very important.
100%. Another topic that we discussed quite heavily was obviously like women in tech. As a woman yourself in a senior tech role, could you tell me about some of, I suppose, like the unique challenges that you've had to face, and maybe perhaps like how do you see the industry evolving to actually support more women in tech?
I mean, I think I've been very lucky as a woman in a senior tech role. I have found myself to have allies all the way through my career. So I found the industry generally to be quite open and supportive. It can be a little bit tiring at times if you walk in and you're the only, as they say, the only woman in the room. And I think, other people from diverse backgrounds I've heard similar, only because sometimes it's just easier to walk in and find people that you can sit next to and talk about, I don't know, the football yesterday evening, or have something natural in common with. So sometimes you have to make more effort. That can be a challenge, but I think what's really valuable now is businesses are having that wider conversation around the genuine business value of having diversity of thought. So your business should reflect your customer base. The people building your products, designing your products, should reflect the customers that are going to use those products. So I think the actual value is really, really important, and that's what businesses need to focus on. It's not just we need diversity in technology. We do, it's the right thing to do, but also the recognition of the genuine business value that also brings. I think that's absolutely vital. And I think where I've noticed a real shift in the last sort of 5+ years is actually what we were talking about earlier, the training opportunities for women in later careers. So, they may have worked in an office, worked in a school, and picked up some tech skills and then decided to build on those tech skills. I think the training opportunities now are so much better. If you've come out of university, you haven't taken up a tech degree, and then later on you start to sort of dip your toe in the water, I think there's now a lot of encouragement and there's a lot of support, which is brilliant. We definitely need to do more of that, because when we're looking at hiring, I'm sure you yourself will know, if you've got a hiring pipeline and somebody comes along and says, why are there no women in this pipeline? There are just not that many senior women in tech available to do the role at the moment. So my approach was always, let's take a step back and grow our own. Let's bring people in at a more junior level and nurture them so that they can actually reach that higher progress with their career.
No, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And the final thing from me then, final question was around like advice for aspiring leaders like you. So for those that are starting their careers in tech, or maybe have a wider aim of leadership at some stage, what key advice could you offer based on your own experiences?
Say yes to new opportunities. Say yes to new opportunities, even if you're not sure that you can do it, as long as you're going in with the attitude that everybody has to start somewhere. Everybody has to learn somewhere. Nobody was born with the ability to do their job. So be open to expanding outside of what you thought might be your next career step. I think being able to take on some responsibility, but also asking for support when you need it. If you have good leaders around you, they will be happy that you ask for support, and they will support you in the areas where you need additional learning, additional training, or a little bit of time to sort of get your feet under the table. I think another part is to get yourself a mentor. If you can if you can have someone that you either admire within your company or within your community or a more formal program, you can find those externally. I think it's really great to have someone who can advise you in a role where they can be objective. So not your direct line manager, they have a completely different part to play, and that's where the support comes in. But I think having someone you can bounce ideas off, having someone who can say, yeah, I did this in a different company and this is what worked for me. I mean, I've done mentoring myself for other people in external companies, and actually I find that I get just as much out of it as they do, because I sometimes have to listen to my own advice. It's all very well giving the advice out there, and then I think, okay, I should do more of that myself. And I think the other piece is building a really great network. So I have a couple of tech roundtables, regular groups of sort of VP of engineering type people that I meet up with maybe quarterly, and they are hugely valuable for things like knowledge sharing, opportunities to work together. Sometimes it can be like a therapy session. You can meet up with a group of people, but it's quite reassuring to walk in, start to have a conversation, whether it's about generative AI or whether it's about, career progression for your team. Everybody is trying to solve the same problems. There's just a slightly different version of the same problem, and it is really reassuring to learn from your peers and to keep building that network out. I found that the most valuable.
100%. Great advice. Look, that's all from me. I just wanted to take a minute to say, look, thanks very much again for joining me. I will get this up, and once I do, I'll be sure to tag in the post just in case anybody wants to connect with you themselves as well. So
Fantastic.
thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Take care.